găsit! Mă adresez azi vouă, oamenilor de orice vârstă, pentru că subiectul e atât de important și ne privește deopotrivă pe toți. Oaspetele meu azi e Vigil, agent secret de top în lupta împotriva cartelurilor la nivel global, fostul șef al operațiunilor internaționale antidrog DEA din Statele Unite ale Americii, profesionist al cărui nume este legat de prinderea unor capi ai mafiei drogurilor, precum temutul traficant Juan Mata Ballesteros, sau de investigațiile ce au dus la nume binecunoscute, precum Narcos ori El Chapo. Se află azi în România, iar azi e aici, în studiourile Creative Hub Voice and Visibility. Dialogul nostru va fi menit a da voce și vizibilitate sporită unui subiect dur. România nu mai vede și nu mai aude de ani buni despre droguri și despre efectul lor distructiv, letal, doar din filme. Țara noastră nu mai e doar un teritoriu de tranzit pentru rețeaua de narcotice internațională, ci a devenit un spațiu în care consumul de droguri are loc la scară îngrijorătoare și crește zi de zi, iar copiii României sunt în pericol și sunt cei mai vulnerabili, din ce în ce mai greu de protejat, oriunde s-ar afla, la școală, pe stradă, în vecinătatea propriilor case. Cu câteva zile în urmă, găzduiam un eveniment antidrog la Cluj, vedeam imagini dure despre ce înseamnă sevrajul, durerea, chinul de ani de zile sau de o viață al întregii familii care are un membru pierdut în fața acestei adicții, iar în ziare, în aceste zile, citeam despre cazul unui copil menționat chiar de ministrul Justiției, în vârstă de numai 8 ani, pentru care drogul a devenit propria realitate. Tineri care devin violenți, de nerecunoscut în propria familie și în afara ei, pentru a obține orice bănuț destinat să-și procure drogul ce îi subjugă. Dascăli ce nu se simt în stare să controleze fenomenul la școală, legi care nu țin ritmul cu realitatea sau autorități care nu fac față, părinți disperați, frică, boală cruntă și moarte. Un tablou succint și înfricoșător al caracatiței care se răspândește și de care trebuie să învățăm să ne apărăm. Cu toții, părinți, copii, profesori, justițiari, oameni cu putere de decizie, politicieni, avem un rol în ceea ce se întâmplă și informarea corectă poate face diferența dintre alb și negru, pentru că această molimă se infiltrează la orice nivel. Welcome to our studio.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
It is never a happy moment to talk about such a heavy subject, but it is so necessary, I think, to be well informed, to understand, to talk about prevention, to find out how to protect our children, ourselves, in front of this big nightmare, isn't it? My first question for you is simple. After such an intense personal history and active professional involvement, how come you are still alive?
That is one question that I ask myself, because there were many moments where I was involved in several gunfights, within 10 feet. And one time in Mexico, we were making an arrest, and one of the traffickers shot one of the Mexican Federal Judicial Police officers in the head. And the first thing that I saw was a spray of red blood shooting up into the air. And he took the gun and fired at me from probably a distance of no more than 1 meter, and fired 2 shots. I could feel the bullets pass by my ear. And then I returned fire and I hit him twice in the chest, and he fell. He was still alive, but died on the way to the hospital. But those were instances that, I had to participate in, and it's kind of tragic because it always ends with human life. But we all know that drug trafficking is very associated with violence. So I was always involved in many, many close quarter shootouts. But I had one tremendous quality, is that I never got excited. Never got excited. And a lot of people, when they know that they're about to potentially die, they get very, very nervous, and they start shooting into the ground, to the side, and never forward. So I maintained, the deadlier it became, I became even more deadly calm.
How is it possible to infiltrate for such a long time in this world of narcotics, yet at the same time to protect yourself from drugs? Were you tested somehow in different ways once you became a part of this network in order to be trusted?
That's a very good question. And you're right, they test you because drug traffickers are very paranoid individuals. And they know that if they get caught, they're probably going to go to prison for a long time. So they'll question you, and then maybe the following day they'll ask you the same questions again to see if you make a mistake. But again, I have a photographic memory, so I could remember everything that I told them, but you also had to expect the unexpected when you were working undercover, because no matter how well you planned it, they were planning, they were making countermeasures, and sometimes it just didn't mesh. And that's where you started to engage in violence.
What are the most important moments, the highlights of your career? What memories you can briefly share, which come along with valuable life lessons?
I learned how to appreciate life. You really don't appreciate life until you have come very close to death. And I came very close to death for a number of years because I was with the Drug Enforcement Administration for 31 years. But you develop a sense, a sixth sense, if you will. And I became very good at that in anticipating the moves of the drug traffickers. And that sixth sense also allowed me to stay alive because I knew, just judging by their movements, by the fact whether they were nervous, whether they were fidgeting, I knew and I could basically predict what was going to take place and be able to, save my life and the lives of others.
For many years, I'm still an activist for children's rights, disadvantaged families. You recently spoke in front of hundreds of teenagers here in Romania, your conferences. Yet I hope this is the moment where we can talk in front of this camera without holding back. What is your practical advice for children, for parents, and also for our authorities in Romania? What can be done at this moment for a better future?
My feeling on the matter is that children need to be educated in terms of not using illegal drugs. I think that it behooves the Romanian government to create public awareness programs. I think also that in the curriculum of school-age children, you need to educate them on illegal drugs, drug addiction, and the parents also need to educate themselves in terms of the use of the internet, because a lot of drug trafficking organizations are using the internet to sell drugs to children.
Correctly.
And many times what they do is they make them appetizing to the children. They sell them like candy in different colors and
with symbols
which
they like.
And for example, on the internet, they use emojis. For example, they'll use a maple leaf, like the Canadian maple leaf, to indicate marijuana, a snowflake to indicate cocaine. And so they use different codes, and the cartels have become very, very sophisticated. And one of the things that I talked to the children is that Romania at one time was nothing more than a transshipment point for illegal drugs coming through the port of Constanța and then moving into other areas. But anytime that you have a country that is used as a transshipment point, you're eventually going to find drugs staying in the country, like in Romania. And now you have a consumer market within the country. And unfortunately, that is going to attract more drug trafficking because now they have a ready-made market to
They
sell
have roots.
to children, to adults. And one of the things that we're having in the United States is a massive crisis. During the last couple of years, we've lost over 107,000 people to drug overdose deaths. 70% of those or more is due to the synthetic opioid called fentanyl. And 2 milligrams of fentanyl, which is the equivalent of a few grains of salt, can be fatal to an adult. It's 50 times stronger than heroin and then 100 times stronger than morphine. And the problem is that the Mexican cartels are mixing fentanyl with marijuana, with methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin. So many times the users don't even know that they're using fentanyl, and that's why they're dying. So we have an issue with the Mexican cartels bringing drugs into Romania. We have the Colombian cartels bringing cocaine in. So the Romanian authorities have to be very proactive in dealing with this problem because a lot of governments are reactive. A problem starts and they wait until it becomes very serious before they act. And it behooves any government, but especially the Romanian government, to act quickly, to act decisively, because if they don't, this situation is going to get far worse.
And for parents, your advice
And
is for
for
parents?
parents,
Simply desperate.
for parents, I would say that they have to monitor the activities of their children. I know many times both parents work and they go home tired, but you need to educate your children. You need to basically tell them that drugs are not good for you because when you use illicit drugs, there's no quality control. It's not like buying drugs at a pharmacy where there's quality control and you're not going to overdose. Anytime that you take illegal drugs, it's plain Russian roulette. When you lose children, anybody for that matter, unnecessarily as a result of illegal drugs, it's very tragic because it has an impact on the family, on relatives. And if you can imagine losing a child, at a very early age, and we have instances where children at the age of 10, 15 years old began using drugs. And a lot of times they use it as a result of peer group pressure. I remember when I was attending the New Mexico State University and I was majoring in criminology, I would go to the rooms of some of my friends and they'd be smoking marijuana. And it was always, the peer group pressure. Come on, try it, use it. But I've always been a leader. I don't consider myself a follower. And I basically take my own path, not the path of others, because, many people are followers. And my advice to the children of Romania is to not be a follower, be a leader, and just say no to drugs.
They say, I don't feel good because the others don't accept me in their group. So I cannot say no.
And that's a very good statement. They do apply a lot of that pressure. And you have to say no. It's better to say no than face death. Because when you use illegal drugs, you never know what you're consuming, the type of purity of the drug. And if your body, especially at a very early age, does not have the tolerance for those drugs, you're going to OD, and it's a miserable death because most drugs, what they do is they suppress your respiratory system, so you can't breathe, so you suffocate to death.
I understand that your job is not an ordinary job, of course.
No.
And your mission took a lot of courage and determination, as well as powerful motivation. So tell me, please, what makes a person totally dedicated to this hard work?
It deals with wanting to save as many lives as you can and doing something that is of benefit to humanity. When I came on the job, I was the youngest one in DEA. I was the youngest one to go through the academy. Everybody else was on an average of 34 years old. I was 22. And I came out and I started to do a lot of undercover work in many areas. And then eventually I went into Mexico and started working against the other cartels because I was in great demand because I was very good at undercover work. So my motive was to remove as many drugs as possible and then save as many lives as possible. I was also responsible for many countries. An operation, the largest one was 36 countries in Mexico, the 7 Central American countries, countries in the Caribbean, and then in South America that proved very effective. And then after the fall of the Taliban in 2001, did Operation Containment, and I actually brought in the Chinese and the Russians. They actually came to the planning session in Ankara, Turkey. And it's kind of funny because I hadn't developed the plan yet, but after the first day of the conference, I sat down in my room and wrote out the entire strategy. I was very good at strategies. And the first year of Operation Containment, we seized 24 metric tons of heroin. In the past, maybe 5 kilos here or there, it was really nothing. So the idea eventually was for me to develop a worldwide intelligence collection system, which I did, and it is still functional today with many countries participating, sharing information, because it's very important to share information because you're talking about transnational organized crime, which means they operate in multiple countries.
They have no borders for this business.
Absolutely.
Michael a fost responsabil pentru numeroase operațiuni multinaționale, coordonând acțiuni în peste 36 de țări. Pe lângă activitatea sa operațională, a devenit și un autor prolific, perspectiva sa unică despre organizațiile criminale, aducându-i recunoaștere în domeniul securității și al luptei împotriva traficului de droguri. A fost numit general de onoare de către guvernul Afganistanului, a primit cheia orașului Shanghai din partea Chinei, sabia de amiral în Republica Dominicană. Își continuă misiunea acum punând accentul pe educație în jurul lumii. I'd like to know, in your opinion, what is the proper age to address this sensitive discussion regarding drugs with our children, and how should we approach it?
I think it's very important that the issue of using or abusing illegal drugs be broached with the children as soon as they are able to understand that concept. But as far as it goes, I think it would be really great for it to start when the children enter elementary school, because the way it works now in most countries, to include the United States, is that they get a healthcare professional or a police officer to go once a year to talk to the children. That's not good enough. That's why it's important to put it into the curriculum and teach them that from the time they're in elementary school until they get out of high school. And a lot of children, they think it's cool because you use drugs. And I've seen people walking around like they just got 3 PhDs in philosophy, because they use drugs, and that's really insane. And they don't have the cognitive ability to understand that maybe within that little group that they hang around with and use drugs, that they may be held in high esteem, but everybody else looks at them as, very negative individuals that bring nothing to mankind.
Is there a small or big difference between occasionally having some fun doing drugs with your friends once in a while and being addicted?
That's very true. But the problem is that once you start using drugs, the time is going to come when you're going to get addicted. And a lot of people say, for example, they use heroin and they say, oh, it has no impact. I don't feel a need for it. But they don't understand that they start to develop a tolerance that, and they get addicted. And then they need more and more because of the fact that their body.
They don't even realize.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
They don't. And the thing is that people in today's world don't do critical thinking. They don't analyze. The internet, can give you a lot of details that will help educate you and, allow you to make the right decisions many times. But people, feel that, I feel a need to belong to a group. Even criminals feel a need to belong to a criminal network. So these are people, again, that are followers, and they're not, leaders as far as I'm concerned.
They don't trust themselves.
No.
Or maybe in the school, we should build this trust for our children.
That is
we
very
should
true.
help them to be more powerful inside.
And it's always good, when they're in school to encourage them to, play sports, to belong to clubs, whatever club it is, and keep them engaged. But again, the parents have to monitor their activities and make sure that they're not hanging around with the wrong crowd that may get them into trouble. Not necessarily using drugs, but, criminal activities. So it's a little ounce of prevention can prevent 2 pounds of cure.
What about parenting nowadays? There is this version of parenting. Let the child do whatever he wants to be free, or put some limits every age. What do you think about this?
Well, people that say, I have to give my child his liberty, I let him do what he wants, you're asking for trouble if you're that type of a parent, because children sometimes are immature, even though they may be in high school or whatever.
They don't have the experience to judge something.
They don't have experience, absolutely. So you have to monitor them and you have to continually guide them. You just can't let them do whatever they want, because eventually they're going to get into trouble. And by that time, it's going to be really difficult to correct their behavior.
It can be too late.
It can be too late.
Let's talk about statistics, about numbers.
Mm.
What do you think is necessary for us to know in order to better understand the humbling reality of this epidemic?
Well, I think that we need to understand the fact that, drug trafficking is a global phenomenon. And drug trafficking organizations now are making hundreds of billions of dollars. So it becomes a problem, because eventually those countries are going to become narco-states. I'll give you an example. In Honduras, in part of what is called the Northern Triangle, along with El Salvador and then Guatemala, they had a president by the name of Juan Orlando Hernandez, and he was the president of Congress, later became president of the country, and he started to corrupt other politicians, empresarios or businessmen, members of the security forces, also people that deal with the judicial system. And it was a transshipment point, and they were moving tons of cocaine from Colombia and then also from Venezuela. So later, everybody became corrupted and it became a narco-state. Now it's gone from a transshipment country into a producer country. They're finding many fields of coca bush, a lot of cocaine conversion laboratories. So that's the danger. That's the danger, and that's why it's very important for a country to look at public awareness, educating the youth, the development of intelligence systems, and sharing information with the security forces of the country, but also with other countries. And like Romania, I know shares information with European countries, but they should also extend those tentacles into Mexico and then also into Colombia. Also, you need to have adequate laws, because if you don't have the laws necessary, the security forces will arrest people and they'll come into the judicial system and they don't have the laws to prosecute, so it becomes a revolving door. And then the other thing also is you need to blend in technology, like in the port of Constanza. It's the busiest seaport on the Black Sea and the 17th busiest seaport in Europe. So you have a lot of containerized cargo. They can handle over 100 million tons of cargo on an annual basis. If you can imagine how much is coming in. So you need scanners to be able to scan the containers, but you also need that along your land ports of entry with the other countries that you have common border with at the airports. So all of this has to synchronize in terms of a strategy that is going to work, because if you leave any one of those facets out, you're still going to have a strategy that has weakness.
How do you see this problem? Talking about laws, do you believe in punishment, or do you believe in the freedom of using whatever you want?
I believe in having adequate laws. And I also believe that people who are addicted to drugs should not go to jail as long as they're not distributing. But if they are addicted, I look at it as a sickness that needs to be treated. So therefore, you need treatment facilities. But in many instances, Andrea, what happens is that they detoxify the individual at these treatment facilities, and then they release them.
And they
And
do the
there's
same
and there's
in
no
1 week.
exactly, and there's no follow-up. And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, a week later, boom, they're addicted
They
again.
don't know what to do with their new freedom.
Exactly. So it's it has to be a plan, and it has to be a comprehensive, effective plan. But a lot of times, like I said, people are reactive instead of proactive.
When talking about this subject, the discussion yields a hopeless feeling. But there is hope. Even in Romania, I discovered a center, an organization called Teen Challenge Romania. There are many countries having Teen Challenge organization dedicated to our teenagers and their rehabilitation. I would like you to join me alongside our viewers to shine light on this sliver of hope and realize that solutions do exist. We need to support them and help them continue their mission.
Chiar credeam că am găsit secretul distracției.
Forma supremă a fericirii.
Am trăit o minciună. Am început să consum din curiozitate și ca să fiu văzut bine în anturaj. Întâi am încercat la 9 ani și am reînceput peste 2 ani și jumătate. Era cool, mă întrebam de ce nu fac mai mulți asta. Mă simțeam stăpân pe mine și credeam că sunt foarte tare pentru vârsta mea.
Am început la o petrecere. Vedeam cum se manifestau ceilalți, erau euforici, iar curiozitatea și presiunea celorlalți m-au făcut în cele din urmă să cedez. Inițial nu consumam zilnic, se întâmpla așa de câteva ori pe lună și din motivul acesta aveam impresia că am totul sub control. Totuși, exista deschiderea spre consumul de droguri și pas cu pas am ajuns de la marihuana la pastile, apoi pastilele am început să le combin cu alcool și în cele din urmă la heroină. Întâi la țigară, apoi injectabil. De când am început să mă injectez, în câteva săptămâni am ajuns să o fac zilnic. De aici a urmat o dependență de 5 ani care aproape m-a distrus.
Puțin înainte de 14 ani am început împreună cu colegii de clasă. Cu toții știam că băieții mai mari decât noi consumau și ne doream să intrăm cumva în rândul lor, să facem ce fac ei. Chiar eu am procurat droguri de la unul dintre ei și am consumat într-o zi după școală. La bază asta dorința de atenție. Mereu încercam să ies în evidență, mi-am dorit să fiu primul din grupul meu care face asta. Chiar credeam că am găsit cheia distracției. Foarte repede am început să fiu persoană de legătură dintre dealer și cei care doreau droguri. Asta îmi plăcea, deși fără să-mi dau seama mă expuneam unui risc destul de mare. Eu eram cel care făcea trafic, eram în prima linie a unei ilegalități.
Cum am știut că sunt dependentă? Păi, într-o dimineață nu aveam droguri și am simțit efectele sevrajului. Dureri de oase, greață, vomă, dureri musculare în tot corpul. După aceea, așa erau toate diminețile în care nu aveam drog.
Mă trezeam noaptea în sevraj, transpirat și aveam crize de furie. Odată, ca să mă calmez, am lovit un perete și mi-am rupt mâna.
În cazul meu a durat câțiva ani ca lucrurile să scape de sub control, dar în ultima perioadă, în ultimii 2 ani, am ajuns în așa fel încât nu eram eu dacă nu consumam. Nu mă mai drogam ca să mă simt bine, să simt acel high, mă drogam doar ca să reușesc să mă simt normal.
Am ajuns dintr-un elev olimpic, premiant, să râdă de mine oamenii de pe stradă. Nu mă mai spălam, nu mai aveam haine, nu mai aveam grijă de mine. Simțeam așa un gol adânc, un sentiment profund de tristețe, de lipsă de scop, de singurătate. Mi-aduc și acum aminte o zi în care eram singură, am resimțit o durere atât de profundă încât am urlat de disperare din cauza lipsei de speranță. Atât de tare am țipat încât a venit un vecin de la parter, eu locuind la etajul 7, să vadă ce se întâmplă cu mine. Mă simțeam respinsă, plină de regret și de neputință.
Chiar dacă am beneficiat de o educație bună și părinții mei au pus foarte mult accent pe valori, pe caracter, stilul de viață dependent m-a schimbat. Am ajuns să fiu arestat pentru trafic, pentru consum, să am apoi probleme pe plan intern. Am fost diagnosticat cu o depresie severă, am avut episoade psihotice din cauza drogurilor. Mă simțeam hăituit, aveam impresia că sunt urmărit și în oricine vedea un potențial pericol.
Ca să fac rost de bani pentru droguri, am ajuns să fur din casa părinților, să fur de la prieteni, să fac împrumuturi bancare cu acte false, am făcut videochat și în cele din urmă am ajuns să mă culc cu bărbați pentru bani. Sincer, de disperare eram gata să fac orice.
Nu exista nicio limită când era vorba să fac rost de bani. Seara împreună cu prietenii, așteptam câte un om pe stradă, îl băteam până leșina și îi luam tot ce avea. Într-o zi mă drogasem foarte tare și am leșinat. Și s-a întâmplat asta că m-a văzut mama și de supărare și de suferință a făcut un atac de cord. Câteva minute, dacă întârzia salvarea, atunci mama murea. Atunci mi-am dat seama că oamenii aceștia, părinții mei, au făcut atâtea pentru mine și eu ce le-am făcut. Le-am furat din casă și am uns să-i bag în pământ. Vedeam suferința din ochii mamei mele și asta m-a convins.
Pe fondul dependenței am fost implicat într-un accident în care cineva a decedat. Când am aflat, am vrut să mă sinucid. M-am suit pe un blog, Am vrut să mă arunc, n-am făcut-o, dar a fost un moment extrem de greu pentru mine. A fost punctul în care am înțeles că nu mai pot să trăiesc așa. Abia când nu am mai avut nicio altă opțiune, am fost dispus să plătesc prețul schimbării.
M-au făcut să spun stop cei care au văzut potențial în mine. Oamenii care mi-au zis că sunt capabilă, că sunt inteligentă, că pot să fac o mulțime de lucruri în viață. Cuvintele acestea mi-au dat viața.
Procesul de schimbare este foarte greu și în același timp este și dur, dar acum am altă speranță și fac altfel de alegeri, alegeri care să mă duc într-un loc bun.
Primul consum de droguri reprezintă un pariu periculos, pentru că miza este chiar viața ta. Ești conștient 100% de consecințe, ești conștient 100% în ce te bagi, pentru că primul consum de droguri poate fi un punct de răscruce în viața ta.
What do you say about those young people and their experience?
I think that the people need guidance. I think that they needed education. I think that they needed to be taught to be leaders and not followers, and not succumb to peer group pressure. There's other ways that you can feel a need that you are making a difference, and that is through studies. That is, maybe getting a job if you're old enough, but at the same time, take a look at helping your country, helping your community, helping your family. And a lot of that you can do by staying away from illegal drugs.
A common misconception is that such things could never happen to my family or to my children. Many people still think that these stories are found just in movies and represent extreme niches. Yet, isn't it even more dangerous not to be able to comprehend the gravity of what's going on?
That is true, because ignorance in terms of the illegal substance abuse can be fatal. And it can be fatal to your children. And, from one day to the next. I remember when I was working in Dallas, Texas, there was a situation in Plano, which was a suburb of Dallas. And one day I was going to work, and I heard that the 12th child in Plano had died from a heroin overdose. So I went to the office, I got my public information officer, went to see the chief of police in Plano, and I told him that we were going to support his effort and we were going to eliminate the problem. And sure enough, what we found out was that there were Mexican drug traffickers trafficking pure heroin. They were not even cutting it. And these children had no tolerance for it. So therefore, they were dying. They didn't even know what it was. They were calling it Chiva and these names. They didn't even know they were consuming heroin. And one of the things that I found amazing in talking to one of the mothers, she said that the son had become addicted, so they sent him to the state of Utah, where you have a Mormon community. It's the largest Mormon community, and they don't smoke. They don't even drink Coca-Cola. But within 2 days, found a source of supply for heroin. The child calls the mother and says, I'm doing fine. Say hi to my dad. The next morning, a medical examiner called the family and said, what do you want us to do with your son's body? Because he had overdosed that night. So again, tragedies do not take years to occur. Tragedies can happen from 1 hour to the next. So you have to, again, take the time to look after your children, educate them, and it's an unsafe world in what we live in because we have what I call narco-terrorism. And these narco organizations are more powerful than some of these terrorist organizations like ISIS, Boko Haram, Hamas, Hezbollah. Why? Because they kill many, many more people. And we are losing more people to drug overdoses than we lost in World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War. So that gives you the magnitude of the problem.
This is your book. Thank you. It's a gift for me, isn't it?
It is a total gift for you.
I need your signature on it.
And you will get that.
Can you tell me a little bit for our viewers, what is it about?
This is a book about a child that was born a psychopath. And as a result of that, he was started to get in trouble at schools and fights and what have you, because he really didn't understand social norms. And eventually he joins a gang and starts to traffic in drugs. But he finds out through a former girlfriend that he's been indicted in federal court. So he flees to Mexico, where he aligns himself with the most powerful Mexican cartel, the Sinaloa cartel, and then eventually starts his own cartel. My books are very violent. This is my 8th book. I'm currently working on my 9th one, which is entitled Ursula, Child Soldier, because as you well know, a lot of criminal groups kidnap children and they put them to fight against the government or fight against other criminal networks. But I have a quote here from Ignacio Morales Lechuga, who was the former Attorney General of Mexico. And he says, "There are many heroes, but very few legends in this world. Mike Vigil is not only a legend who transcends time, but is also a mythical figure." So it's my pleasure to present this to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for this valuable information sharing with us. And I wish you health and many other countries to go and to speak to the children, to the parents, to the authorities. We need correct information and we need to follow a good path.
Well, let me say that I congratulate you simply because you provide you're a very valuable asset to the country of Romania simply because you educate the public, and that it creates tremendous public awareness and that saves lives. So kudos to you.
Thank you very much. I'm a mother also, so I think when we have a child, we think a lot about those subjects.
Absolutely.
And if we are in front of the cameras, I think we have a mission to talk about those sensitive subjects and to spread the news.
But you do it. There's a lot of news channels that don't do that. And all they talk about is problems and problems, but no solutions. And you bring that to the table. So you are doing God's work.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure.